Namaste. Welcome to the Hindu Parenting Podcast. We all grew up thinking of the Panchatantra as a mere collection of animal fables or moral stories for children. In fact, the Panchatantra is the most translated, most adapted literary book in the world. The Panchatantra has served as a source, directly or indirectly, for many works of modern literature. A number of Arabian and Western tales are adaptations of the stories of the Panchatantra. What is in it that made this ancient work from Bharata so popular worldwide? On the podcast today, we have Dr. M.V. Vishwanath to help us understand the Panchatantra. Dr. Vishwanath is a reputed scholar with 3 MA degrees and a PhD in Sanskritam from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. His research areas include Sanskritam literature, Arthashastra, and Sankhya philosophy. He also delivers various sessions on Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, Yoga, and Upanishads for many yoga schools, both online and offline. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Vishwanath. It's a great honor for us to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It's a privilege to be part of this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let's start at the very beginning. What is the Panchatantra?
That's, I think, one of the fundamental questions that we need to answer in order to understand what Panchatantra is. The word itself is self-explanatory in Sanskrita, because Pancha refers to 5, Tantra refers to the style of literature. The entire literature is usually classified as Shastra and Kavya. And whatever we have as Shastra, the style of Shastra differs in various stages. There are Sutra Granthas like Brahma Sutras, Dharma Sutras, Ashtadhyayi. So these are Sutra Granthas. Then we have Bhashyas like Shankara Bhashya, Ramanuja Bhashya, and all these things. We have Puranas, and they are all in the poetry form. And similarly, we have something which is very, very fundamental, and it explains the most important things, the most fundamental things. And the text that explains the most fundamental things are generally called as Tantra. Tantra has got various meanings. Tantra sometimes refers to Upaya as well. The remedies, the solutions, the variety of solutions are also collectively called as Tantra. But here in this context of Panchatantra, the word Tantra refers to the 5 important ideologies that every administrator must possess. Even though for every administrator it is important to have the thorough knowledge, the complete knowledge of the entire Arthashastra, the administrative science. However, at least these 5 tantras are very important. That's how the name Panchatantra has become famous, or that's how the name Panchatantra has come into existence. Now, this is the meaning of the word Panchatantra. A collection of 5 tantras is what the word Panchatantra actually tells us.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I think that leads us to the question then as to how old is the Panchatantra? Do we have a date for it? Is it well known? Yeah, please.
Yeah. Usually, this has become the norm these days, especially with the academic exercises that go around in the world. It has become very important for us to get the date of all our texts, just to authenticate or just to ensure that we have the correct document with us. The Panchatantra is usually believed to belong to somewhere around 200 BCE. So that is generally what is believed. That's how old Panchatantra text is. The author is Vishnu Sharma. That's an interesting story of how Vishnu Sharma started this Panchatantra. There was a king, and the king actually wanted his sons to learn the art of political science, the art of administration. And he tried all his luck, and there were plenty of great teachers available in his kingdom, but none of them were able to replicate, none of them were able to deliver what the king was expecting in his sons. Because when they grow up, they have to become able administrators, but the king was not satisfied with the advancement that his sons have made in terms of learning the administrative sciences. There was no advancement, to be honest, because they were absolutely dumb. So that's how the Panchatantra story begins. That the king was very sad that he says that it is better to have no children than have dumb children. So that's the opening statement that the king makes, and then he calls for a solution from his ministers, and he seeks their advice. And he asks them, is there anybody who can teach my children the administrative sciences? And then comes, in this situation, steps in Vishnu Sharma, who pledges that you give me 6 months. Within 6 months, if I do not make your children thorough enough in Arthashastra, then whatever lokas I have gained, this is actually I'm reading directly from the text. This is what he mentions. This is what he says, that if I do not succeed in making your children successful in understanding Arthashastra, or at least getting initiated into Arthashastra, I shall give up whatever lokas I have earned. And what he means by this is whatever tapasya I have earned, whatever I have earned through my tapasya, whether it is Atma Vidya or Brahma Vidya or any other type of Vidya that he has gained, he shall forfeit all of it because he was not able to teach these young children. And he takes the task upon himself, and thus begins the journey of Panchatantra. So it goes back to 200 BC, just to put the history cap for a second and understand that this is how it appears. That is the time of Panchatantra. But honestly, as long as humanity exists, as long as administration is required, and as long as we have fathers who want their children or who want their next generation to be well versed in administrative sciences, and as long as we have people who are not smart enough, wise enough, intellectual enough, or intelligent enough to understand the administrative sciences, we would require Panchatantra. So, in other words, Panchatantra is eternal because the dumbness of human beings is not going to end soon when it comes to the ever evolving world. Therefore, Panchatantra is eternal, is evergreen. However, the text dates back to 200 BCE.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention it's eternal. So many of the Shastras that originate from Bharat, they're all eternal. We were just dealing with the Natya Shastra the other day. And I mean, these are all timeless. So coming to the pre-Macaulay system of education, at what age was Arthashastra taught? Was it taught through the Panchatantra to students?
Mm. It was specifically designed for the royals. It's not like it was not taught to, or it cannot be taught to general public either. It can be taught to general public, but Arthashastra was mainly meant for those who want to understand how to administer, how to govern. Uh, Unfortunately, we live in an era where we think that we may not require any educational background as such in order to become a great leader. That's how leadership has been projected. Whether on the good side of it or the bad side of it, leadership has been wrongly presented to the world that it requires no special talent, it requires no special education and all such things. But that is not true. It is required, it is mandatory for every administrator to have a proper understanding of how the system functions. And the study of the administration itself is called as Artha Shastra. Artha basically refers to the means of existence, the means of survival, whatever it takes, or however we ensure that all the people in the kingdom are going on about their day-to-day activities. We need to ensure that balance, we need to ensure the resource management. So all of this is taken into consideration in Arthashastra. So it is our MBAs, different fields of MBAs all put together into one. Therefore, it was not only meant for the royals, but it was also meant for those who are into administration and who were a part of administration. And of course, generally as well, those who were interested, they were also taught Arthashastra. And Panchatantra was one of the means of teaching Arthashastra.
And this was taught in Gurukuls, right? By the Guru.
Correct.
Okay. So we don't have a continuing tradition of this being taught, in the sense we had it, but with modern education, I guess the link is cut off, and this is not being taught anymore to anybody, right?
Yeah, that's unfortunately true. And also another disappointing thing that has happened with Panchatantra is that it has been reduced to a status. I don't mean any disrespect to children literature, but it has been reduced to the level of children. It is showcased, or it is presented as if it is meant for only children, small children. If you want to engage them in something, then you narrate them the stories of Panchatantra, because it has animals speaking. So our own animated version of stories. That's how we ourselves have degraded Panchatantra's value. If we keep aside the animals and fables and all these kind of things that associate with Panchatantra, if we just look at the values that it imparts, then those values are, as I mentioned, they are eternal and they are useful, they are relevant at all ages. Unfortunately, we don't find that kind of a system which is still using Panchatantra as a means of educating people in administrative sciences.
This is interesting when you say that, it's been relegated to the status of kids' literature. Why and how do you think this happened? When was this process begun, of sort of belittling and again, I think we have to put a disclaimer that, of course, literature for children is very important, but to slot Panchatantra as kiddie literature, when and how do you think that this happened?
Honestly, we cannot pinpoint any time in history and say that, this is exactly where Panchatantra was reduced to this level. What might have happened is, this is purely my personal point of view, what might have happened is, it is true that it can be taught to children, and to teach children Arthashastra or to brief them about the ideas of statecraft was a great thing, was a noble thing. In fact, we hear so many interim kings who in our history, in our own country's history, we hear so many interim kings taking over the kingdom because the king was not yet, he hasn't come of age. So at times it has led to mutiny, it has led to several cold wars and internal wars and all these things. And at that time, and at those times, I'm sure that when we hear the famous story of Shivaji, when Shivaji's mother was training him, I'm sure Shivaji's mother would have used stories taken from Panchatantra, not exactly from Panchatantra. We may not be able to find such references, but there would definitely be the communication way would be through stories in order to educate about statecraft. So what might have happened is, rather than academically calling Panchatantra as only belonging to children literature category, more than that, I believe that whatever was supposed to be taught to children through Panchatantra, that was missing. And we somehow convinced ourselves that Panchatantra is meant to keep the children engaged by telling them or narrating them the stories of animals and birds. So that might have happened because we haven't lost the structure of it. The stories are intact even to this day. Only the core is missing. The core was to teach them Arthashastra, or to at least lead them towards administrative sciences. That is not happening. However, the story part is still intact, and it is a wonderful parampara that is going on. And people from literature would claim that Panchatantra and Hitopadesha have contributed massively to the Katha parampara of our country, which is true. But again, Panchatantra was not meant only for continuing the lineage of Katha parampara, serve a higher purpose. That was to, through these stories, we wanted to teach children about Arthashastra. That is missing. So somewhere, I think we cannot pinpoint a particular time in history because we don't have enough evidence with us where exactly it happened. It could have happened at any given point of time. That we have missed the point. We have just gone away from the core of Panchatantra.
Yes, you mentioned that there are many layers to this kind of knowledge. So one is, of course, at the very surface level of animal stories to entertain children. And the deepest level, of course, is a knowledge of Arthashastra. There must be something that children, or not just children, teenagers, young adults, even adults can take away from a reading of the Panchatantra today. So how can it help us if we know a little bit about the Panchatantra? Can everybody take something away from this text?
Yes, absolutely. This is a very, very important question because this, in fact, proves the relevance of Panchatantra in today's perspective. See, the word Tantra, as I mentioned, that is the foundation to climb towards Artha Shastra. So there is a structure, a trinity structure that we usually follow in all our knowledge systems: Tantra, Shastra, Darshana. So Tantra is always technical. It has got more technical details. Shastra is more regulatory in nature, regulatory by nature. And Darshana is experiential. So if we want to experience the peace, the bliss that we have in our country, or if we want to ensure that all of us are living peacefully, how do you ensure that the entire country can remain peaceful? So maybe the idea of country can be a little too far-fetched for young minds, for young adults. We can start with a small community, and I'm sure these days schools and colleges, they have plenty of group activities. So when they are in a group, if we ask someone to head that group, and if we ask that group leader to take up the responsibility of ensuring that everybody in the group should remain happy, should remain content, and they should feel that they are all contributing. So this is how usually, in management schools, they develop leadership qualities and all these things. So that can be inculcated in children as well. And while doing so, we can go through these Panchatantra stories, because these Panchatantra stories can help us in understanding these things. First and foremost, even though it just reveals all the animal stories, so that is our bait, that is the entry point. So once we get hooked to this kind of animal conversations, and anybody who reads Panchatantra in its original, they would vouch for this, that the style in which Panchatantra has been presented, the stories have been narrated, they are so very powerful that they make you hooked to the story. You don't want to miss the narration. You don't want to step away from the book even for a second. That's how engaging the style is. And when we have some powerful narrators of these stories, it makes even more impactful. It makes it more impactful. And it all starts with those stories, and those stories leave an indelible mark on the young adults' minds. And based on that, a revisit or a kind of recalling of the story. But this time, when we recall these stories, we don't just look at the details of the stories, but we go a little beyond it. And that is the Shastra part of it. So when we have the story with us, the story part is the Panchatantra Tantra part, actually. And that should usually lead us towards understanding the regulations behind it. Why exactly such a step was taken, such words were spoken by so and so animal, and then that eventually leads us towards that ultimate goal, that is blissful experience. So there is a possibility of going through in this particular krama. This is krama baddha, and if we make it in a disciplined manner, it can eventually lead towards it. So rather than reading only moral stories that are that are told by other people of how one should behave, this is something which is a self-learning experience for children as well. Every time when they listen to a story, they should not only listen to a story, they should revisit that story and find out what is the link behind it, what is the moral behind it, what is the tattva behind it. And slowly, when someone starts explaining them how it is important, Panchatantra, how it can play these stories, how they can play an important role in shaping not only our personality, but also our interpersonal relations with the society, with the community, with the nation, with the world. So it just makes it more interesting for them. So yeah, Panchatantra can be used as a stepping stone, can be used as a powerful tool in order to initiate students into this kind of an activity.
Is Aesop's fables derived from Panchatantra? We hear so much about these variations. Most of the
Correct.
Western kings, first time kids hear about these kinds of stories is through Aesop's fables, usually.
Yeah,
So is
true.
that influenced by Panchatantra?
Uh, I think the influence is kind of mutual. And it's not just that Panchatantra only has influenced the Aesop's tales or something like that. Even if it has, it hasn't, it has only influenced on the outlook of the stories. We may find some similarities in how the stories appear or how the stories are woven in both the texts. But the kind of depth that Panchatantra offers in terms of administration, no other text comes even closer to what Panchatantra achieves. And unfortunately, this part has never been highlighted in our country about Panchatantra. It is still treated as something as a pioneer in the children literature or in terms of storytelling literature. But that's not how Panchatantra should be viewed. It has got a deeper impact. It has the possibility to teach so many great things for an administrator. Maybe in order to prove this, we may want to have some practical the sessions, practical sessions in the sense, how do we derive practical solutions for problems that the modern administrators face? Only when we can ensure these solutions through Panchatantra, then Panchatantra's salt will be proven. Only the worth of Panchatantra can be proven. Until then, it will be a hypothetical situation, rhetoric, and all those things. But at least we have to get the narrative started. So this is the narrative getting started, but it's a long way to go. If we find any For example, any conflict that is happening between two nations, whether it is Israel and its neighboring countries, or whether it is Ukraine and Russia, or whether it is the same India and China border issues, or India Pakistan border issues, whatever the issues are, if we are able to come up with a strong solution, or at least an idea that is derived from uh, the Panchatantras, then I think, we are talking, then we can really put Panchatantra up on the pedestal and say that this is a strong political literature that we have. Such kind of efforts, unfortunately, have not been done. So hopefully we can take those kind of things in future.
Yes, that's the first step. Hopefully, from here, things will start happening.
Yeah. But when we start teaching this to children, that is more convenient, according to me, rather than trying to correct something at a top end. If we just try to build from the bottom, from the grassroots level, if we train our children correctly in Arthashastra, if they get a correct idea of how administration must function, what is the idea, or what is the essence behind administration, then I think it becomes much easier to take things up forward.
So we've talked in generalities. Now, if we come to parenting, how can the Panchatantra help in parenting, and what can parents and children do together to learn from the Panchatantra?
Yeah, that's another brilliant thing. Now I'm reminded of one beautiful shloka from Raghuvamsha, where Kalidasa, he is explaining how the Raghuvamsha kings were. So he says that sapita pitarastasam kevalam janma hetavaha prajanam vinayadhanat rakshanat bharanadapi. So three things that any family would attest to these things. What are these three things that every family has, or what makes the family actually a family? Is vinayadhanat, disciplining, which is, I don't know if I can say so, but almost on the verge of breaking down, which is kind of lost nowadays. But disciplining was one of the major attributes of a family. So it was all, we hear so many stories, also in the yesteryear movies as well. We see that families' pride, or families' gaurav, that always comes first. We are secondary, family is supreme. So this kind of idea was there, and that all comes down to this point, that it brings us that humility, it makes us grounded, rooted, and it brings us that we should always be humble enough, and in order to remain humble, we need to be disciplined. So the discipline part comes from family. So Kalidasa mentions that vinaya dhan, this is what a king also does. See, if we observe all the rules and regulations that the administration does, why does administration go through so much of effort to ensure, or just to tell us what to do and what not to do? Because they are ensuring that we remain grounded and we remain rooted, and we do not encounter any unnecessary activities or any unnecessary consequences. So keeping that foresightedness, when the administration decides that you have to follow these rules, this is the discipline of this community, this is the discipline of this society, this is the discipline of this nation, we all adhere to it, we all understand, we all follow it. So that actually starts from the family itself. So parents, when they start setting an example of how disciplined one should be, see, a parent cannot stay asleep till 8 in the morning and expect their children to wake up at 5 in the morning, because that doesn't make any sense. The parents have to themselves set an example. That's what even the Gita Acharya Krishna said, yadyad acharati shresthaha tattadevetaro janaha. So it is always what the tall people, the big people, whatever they do, the next generation, they tend to follow them. So it is very important for the parents to understand the nuances that are mentioned in Panchatantra, the management that is mentioned in Panchatantra, whether it is a personal resource management or financial management or human resource management, natural resource management, every single aspect exists in the family. How should we use water? And how should we not consume more electricity? So these are some of the things that parents can easily pass on to children. And this is exactly where Panchatantra helps. With these stories, how do we associate uh, with some energies, or what sort of information do we seek or do we consume? Nowadays, more than friendships and neighborhood and everything, it has become a close relationship with the information that we consume via our phones and television sets and everything. So it is important for the parents to teach children, to showcase how to consume information, which is very important. So that is what discipline should be there. Now, how much should we take? So Vinaya Dhana, and of course Rakshana. Rakshana is protection. They always protect each other. And Bharana, nourishing each other. So these are the three things that every family does. And since the king did all these things, Kalidasa says that Sapita, he became the father for this entire kingdom. And then what about their biological fathers? Well, exactly, they were meant as only biological fathers. So this is the role of a king envisioned by the greatest poet of our country. So a king is not supposed to remain as only a king. He's supposed to be like a father. So even there, the example is given, the analogy is set along with the family. So parents or parenting as such is a very, very important thing, and it is something that cannot be neglected anymore. We need to understand that part, that parenting is not something that we can take it for granted. There was a time when they used to take it for granted because we never in a nuclear family, we were in a big family, and there were always alternatives, and there were always people who would discipline children. Now there are only two people in a family who can discipline the child, and both of them are working, and the child loses the whole concept of discipline. So the parents must ensure that their presence should be valuable, should be worthy enough for the child. And the child should inculcate every single habit by imitating the parents. So the onus is more on the parents rather than the young children, because children, wherever however they are always going to look up to the parents. So it is parents' utmost responsibility to conduct themselves in such a way that it sets an example for the child on not only how to manage itself, but also how the child must manage itself in a group of people, in a small community, in a larger community, in society, in nation, in the world. And for all these things, Panchatantra helps. These small stories, they show how one should conduct. For example, Mitra Bheda, how not to make bad investments in people or in resources. And the second tantra is Mitra Samprapti, how to ensure that we are always associated with the right set of resources. And then Labdha Pranasha, how not to lose the resources that we already are inheriting. And then Kakolukiya, the dilemma that we usually get in terms of decision making. And then Aparikshita Karaka, this is the fifth tantra. The Aparikshita Karaka means how one should not uh, involve in any work without examining its pros and cons, the SWOT analysis, whatever name we want to give it, but that is aparikshita karaka. When one does involve in an activity without examining what its outcomes could be, then it can be detrimental. So all these things not only address the personality development, but also reveals, but also contributes to nation building. So we should be focusing on that part, and parents must inculcate this habit of not just this is my son, this is my daughter, and they should be the best uh, version of themselves. Now, that is a noble idea. It is a great idea. I'm not saying that it is wrong. But the parents must also tell children that you are essentially a global citizen. You have a responsibility for the nation where you are born, for the society that you are a part of, for the community that has contributed so much for your upbringing. So this sense is missing, and when we inculcate these senses in children as parents, I think we are not away from the Bhavya Bharata. So yeah, that's how Panchatantra can help even the parents as well in devising ideas of developing children's ulterior personality, not just one level of personality, but multi-layered personality of children.
This is a profound and beautiful look at so many things here: the culture, the civilization, the Shastras, stories, the wisdom, and how they're all related and conveyed in this one package that is so attractive and easy for children to grasp. So this itself is a great achievement from this civilization. Now, the original is in Sanskrita, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So are there versions available in different languages,
Uh,
and obviously also in English, that the modern day parents can actually access this along with their children?
yeah. I think that's a that's a very valid question, but I would always request everybody to, in fact, go through the original rather than go for the translation, because the translations can at times mislead. There are many things that get lost in the translation. However, the translations for Kannada language is available in Bhimsen Rao's work of Panchatantra. And English translations are also available. Ishwara Chandra Vidyasagar has also written a beautiful commentary on Panchatantra. And M.R. Kale, his English notes, English commentary is commendable. That can also be referred. So there are many such references for Panchatantra as such, but I would still request everyone uh, to taste the real, the essence of Panchatantra in its origin. And when we read it in original, it gives us a different type of outlook. It makes our approach, it makes our understanding and comprehension much better. 100 times much better than what we understand through translations. But yeah, there are these are some of the references that we can follow in order to get ourselves initiated into Panchatantra at least.
Okay, I think we have had a very interesting and profound conversation. So before we end, is there some advice that you would like to give our audience, the parents? And in fact, we have quite a lot of young audience too. So maybe to parents and children, what would be your parting words?
So my
Please.
parting message would be to all the youngsters as well as their respective parents would be to remain always humble towards the upbringing. So when I say upbringing, it's not just about our parents, but the great parampara that has contributed to our existence today. If we do not take pride in the very existence of our nature, of our culture, uh, of our fabric. And if we are existing today, if we are breathing today, it all comes down to millions and millions of sacrifices that people have done over many eras. I'm not just mentioning about any one particular era where people have fought and have sacrificed their lives. There are innumerable people who have sacrificed their lives, not just for the survival, not just for the existence of this land, but also they have ensured that the culture, that the Samskriti remains intact throughout the parampara. So we need to respect that. We need to imbibe that pride in ourselves. We should be proud Bharatiyas. We should not feel dejected that we come from a country. Um, I come from two different types of India. No, I come from only one type of India. I come from only one type of Bharata. the land of rishis. So the moment we start recognizing our country as the land of rishis, then it all makes sense, because all of these vidya, the great Bharatiya Jnana Parampara we have, it all makes sense to us because it is our intellectual property. And if it is something that is ours, then we will always try to preserve it, try to defend it, and that should be there, and always remain humble to the country as well. It may not seem that it has done plenty of things to us in some sense, but we are nobody to judge. It has given us this place, this air to breathe, and this place to stay. We should be grateful to this motherland. So if we can have these two things at all times in our mind, I guess we will be in safer hands. Our paths will always be led in the right direction. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It was great speaking about all these things. I look forward to many such interactions in the future. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Guha. It was our pleasure too. I think we've had such a lovely, crisp, and very concise conversation as an introduction to the Panchatantra for our audience. And I am sure we will get you back for more in-depth conversation on the Panchatantra. And until the next time, please do listen to us and please spread the word around about our podcast. Thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you for listening in. And please subscribe to us at hinduparenting.substack.com. We also have a website now. It's called hinduparenting.org. So you can check out our website. We are there on all social media platforms. We go by the handle Hindu Parenting on all of them. We are there on Twitter or X as it's called now. We are there on Instagram. We are there on Facebook and Telegram. So we are there on all major social media platforms. We are also available on podcast platforms, and you can catch us there if that's your preferred medium to listen to our podcasts. So please do listen to us, continue to support us, and we will be back with another podcast soon. Until then,